Hi, I'm Kayla Hathaway, partner here at Cimpatico. I'm launching our climate.edu channel to help students learn about the degree programs that are training the future leaders of the green economy. I'll be interviewing graduate program leaders about the degrees offered at their schools, how applicants can best prepare, what to expect as a student, research and internship opportunities, and long-term career prospects. I'll also be asking renowned professors and grad students for their thoughts on the types of skills undergraduates should focus on developing as they prepare for a master's or doctorate program. And now, on to today's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our second episode of Gerald Kootenay's book series, Carbon Politics and the Failure of the Kyoto Protocol. For those that weren't able to join us last week, I'll go ahead and have the pleasure of introducing Gerald once again to you. He is an author and media commentator on the politics of the climate crisis. He's authored the book Carbon Politics and the Failure of the Kyoto Protocol, and Gerald's consulting firm, 6Element Sustainable Management, specializes in helping entrepreneurs make their bioeconomy projects a success. Gerald, thank you so much for joining me again. It's a pleasure having you back on.
A real pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
All right, so today we have the lovely drama of the GlacierGate and ClimateGate from the IPCC. So we'll go ahead and just dive right on into it. What was GlacierGate? Like, what's the story behind this idea that was going on with, I think it was the Himalayas?
Yeah, it was. You have to set the stage for what was happening at this time.
Okay.
Actually, the stage was more important than the actual events.
Mm-hmm.
And that stage was the COP meeting in Copenhagen, which was supposed to be the blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime there's anything blockbuster about climate change, the climate denial organization and the denial machine goes out full tilt. And so started a giant program to find out anything that could be wrong with the IPCC report, which was the cornerstone of what was going to happen at Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
GlacierGate was relatively simple. In the chapter, I investigated what had happened in GlacierGate in detail, and simply someone had made a mistake. There was no conspiracy, there was no intrigue involved. And you have to realize, I forget how many pages are in the IPCC report. It's probably like 1,000 pages or something.
It's a lot. I think the AR5 was like over 700.
Okay. And what we're talking about is one small paragraph of 3 lines. And so somehow a mistake was made. There was no doubt it was a mistake. A year was put in incorrectly, and the IPCC system did not catch it.
Oh no.
So what turned out to be a human error, turned out to be this huge international scandal that there was something wrong and underhanded about the IPCC. It was ludicrous. It was a conspiracy theory that was led by the supporters of the fossil fuel industry.
Gotta love it when someone just goes and makes a typo and then the wrath of the world comes down upon you.
Yeah, and face it, we've all had that happen to us sometimes too. But in this case, it literally became international news. It was picked up by the BBC. It was picked up by all the big news agencies. And face it, bad news is usually good news for the standard media outlets. And it was sad. A lot of people suffered personally over this. It went on for months afterwards. And actually today, you'll still see references to what happened in Glacier Gate.
Hmm. And so with the information in the 3 lines, it was just a year in regards to what was like the melt that was expected to happen, if I remember.
Yeah, what had happened was, and it wasn't this is one of the few times that the IPCC used what's called gray literature, which they're allowed to use, but I forget what the percentage is. It's like 98% is always peer reviewed. This was not. And this piece of gray literature had stated that the Himalayas were going to melt in 2350. It was then repeated by a non-government organization as 2035.
Oh no.
And the IPCC put that in their report. And so,
Oh.
yes, it was a mistake. It didn't change the outcome of what the document was saying. It wasn't that this was the only pivotal piece of information that was out there. And so it truly got blown out of proportion. The mistake was eventually acknowledged, and it never hurt the credibility of the report overall, even though that many groups tried to show that, again, there was something wrong with the IPCC, and in a nasty way. It wasn't that, gee whiz, guys, you guys should be more careful and not make mistakes like this. It was, oh, somehow you're evil and you're just trying to mislead the public on what's happening with climate change, which was a further thing from the truth.
It's like, how dare you try to get us on the right track to preserve our environment and our communities.
Exactly.
And so what came out of Glacier Gate? Like, what did the IPCC learn from this, like, unfortunate typo?
When a mistake happens, and it doesn't matter if it's the IPCC or if it's us, the best thing that can happen is that we learn from that mistake. You don't beat yourself up about it. You make a mistake and you say, okay, was it just bad judgment? Should I have been more careful? Whatever the case may be. There were so many investigations over Glacier Gate, very high profile ones. And one of them that was ordered by the UN to see what had gone wrong, because the IPCC is trying its best to be perfect. It really is trying. In this case, it wasn't. And so there was recommendations made. I analyzed what the recommendations were, which I thought were excellent, by the way. I thought the IPCC could have taken more action than they did from those recommendations, but that was my opinion. They're the ones that ultimately have to choose on this. Being part of the IPCC is not easy. You're talking about a multinational organization, part of the UN. And so the people you have to please are immense and their needs are widely scattered. And also we're talking about rules for some of the leading scientists in the world. Scientists don't work well with hard rules. And that's because it's part of the scientific process. And so I'm making a little bit of excuse for the IPCC why they didn't do more of the recommendations, but I didn't totally agree with what they had done. But at the same time, I understand why they didn't just put these more hard-nosed recommendations in to protect the IPCC from things like this in the future. And in fairness, not much has happened since. We'll see what happens with the AR6. There are big guys scrutinizing through that again, looking, say, oh my goodness, there's an I not dotted. That's a conspiracy by the IPCC.
They misspelled literally. They're wrong.
That's right.
And so after Glacier Gate, we had ClimateGate that occurred like fairly quickly right after that. If you'd like to explain a little bit about what ClimateGate is.
Well, just a great coincidence at the time, literally within a couple of weeks of each other, the email server of the University of East Anglia was hacked. That was a pretty high-powered move done by someone. Okay, these things don't happen easily. and that it happened again just around the time of Copenhagen, it was really a plot that they were going, the members of the so-called denial machine were going at full tilt to do everything they could to undermine the authority of the IPCC and the scientists involved. These are private emails through the university server between especially 3 or 4 very well-known, internationally known climate scientists that were being harassed by climate deniers. I would hate if anyone ever got into my email server and started seeing some of the crap that I have put in there in the past. And they took thousands of emails, of which they posted what looked like some of the most damning ones. Well, the world was already upset a little bit with GlacierGate. The press went real bananas with so-called ClimateGate. And I want to stress that I unfortunately use those terms in my book. There was no gates. Okay, that's the impression that people get from Watergate, that there was a criminal underhanded activity going on. I adamantly state there was nothing like that going on with any of these so-called gates whatsoever. This was purely a creation of people's minds, especially the climate deniers. ClimateGate was way, way worse about how the scientists involved were persecuted and prosecuted. They went through inquiry after inquiry over what was stated in those emails.
Yeah, and I think one of the people that was affected quite a bit was Michael E. Mann, right? Like he got like raked along the coals for his emails.
Yeah, what Dr. Mann went through was disgraceful. And the problem is this was done in the press and it was done through politicians. And there was no stopping either one of them. We're talking about one of the foremost prize-winning scientists in the world that's had to spend time and energy and money to constantly defend himself. The important thing that came of this, I forget the total number of international investigations. There was a handful in the UK. There was also a handful in the US. None of them found any impropriety actions on behalf of the scientists involved. In the one in the UK, the only thing that was brought up was the Freedom of Information Act had not been adhered to. Now, even that requires a comment. The group that was commented on about violating the Freedom of Information Act was the University of East Anglia, not the scientists. But there's more to this story. Freedom of Information Act is a very good thing to have. And usually the university would get, I don't know, a handful over a year. In 1 week, they got over 60. And this was part of a malicious campaign, again, part of the whole conspiracy that was going on. That was a setup. First of all, no one can respond to 60 Freedom of Information Act coming out in 1 week.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the law, no one ever expected anyone would abuse it like this. And so even if they wanted to, there was no way that these requests for information could be taken care of.
Yeah, like just absolutely no resources to even, I can only imagine like the poor like person that would like be getting these inquiries and just like watching him continue to pop up and be like, oh my God, like my job's flashing before my eyes.
Well, the one thing you have to do is, again, these scientists were already being harassed on a regular basis by well-known high-profile climate deniers. Of course, they didn't like this and they didn't like what was happening. And some of that is reflected in the emails that were exchanged between them, which again was taking of context. People did not know the context. I didn't know the context of most of them, but I knew generally what was happening. And so again, it's totally unfair what happened out of this. And literally years afterwards, some of these scientists were still having to defend themselves all the time. Today on Twitter, I see stupid comments, and I mean stupid comments by people still bringing them up. And my response to that is that so-called climategate happened over a decade ago. All these investigations found nothing, not a single one. History has passed judgment. In 2019, Dr. Mann won one of the most prestigious environmental science awards in the world, the Tyler Prize, in 2019. And so the world has already made its decision. History has made its decision on this. This is a dead issue.
Yeah, but in the age of the internet and just, I hate saying like the time of post-truth because it's just like, it feels bad. But like in the age where like misinformation can spread so like rapidly, and how like, what's a how ideas don't need to be challenged, when you're it's easy to not challenge your own ideas, and it's easy to hear something that someone said a while ago and then just take that as truth, especially when like there's all this like quote on evidence from other people saying that it's truth.
Well,
And
you run into the problem that it's a terrible thing to say. The truth almost doesn't matter anymore.
yeah.
And the problem is one, there is a lot of nasty and cruel people out there. And social media is an echo chamber for them to vent the way they want. And a lot of this is actually malicious.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is someone gives a fake comment. Let's say this comment about how it was, there was corruption taking place in the IPCC, and the emails prove that. It'll take them 10, 20 seconds to put that into a tweet. But to defend and to show the truth, it takes ages afterwards. It's just the nature of the beast. And doing that within Twitter, at times it can be impossible.
Oh yeah, like there's literally no way to have like a true like educational discussion on Twitter. Like or unless you're like trying to have like a big long like feed of like, all right, topic 1, the emails, blah 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 blah. Michael Mann's innocent. The world said he's innocent. Here's all the evidence. People won't go and read through a massive thread. Like it's the scroll. Oh, like Michael Mann's emails were leaked. Oh, that heathen, and then just like then just continuing to scroll instead of being like, oh wait, the world said he's innocent. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then as an environmental content creator myself, like I was mentioning before the episode started, getting people that are like, oh well, since you won't listen to my side, you obviously don't understand basic climate science. And it's like, you're here saying we need more CO2 so we have better plants and the ocean acidification is not even happening. Like,
Well, the thing we're talking about too, we're talking about not just scientists, some of the top ones in the world. And their research is critically important for our understanding of climate change, and that we react appropriately because of the dangers that lie ahead.
mm-hmm.
And there's these bunch of, I won't say it, who are out there trying to shame these people for not just doing their jobs, but doing their jobs well. And in the end, everything they do is out there to help us.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrendous. I'm a scientist by background. I'm not a climate scientist. And I look at what has been happening out there, and it's disgusting what I see most of the time. And what's really important is that when you do see stuff like this, just like you were commenting, you do this as well. Don't be silent about it. Stand up to people, whether it's on Twitter or it's on a video, or people you meet around the coffee machine. Don't accept this, because this is wrong. Mm. And we're all paying the price for this. Dr. Mann and the other scientists that were involved paid the ultimate price, big time, for this. It was terrible what happened. But we're all suffering because of this, because the climate crisis is continuing because politicians aren't reacting. Mm-hmm. And it's stuff like this that gives them an excuse. It's not a reason, an excuse not to react.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's something Just even looking into like United States politics, where you have a lot of if Biden gets elected, then radical socialism is going to be our government. And it's like, do you not understand the actual definition of socialism and how there's no, like, that they're not proposing that economic system?
It's good you brought that up, because I see on Twitter all the time that people say the IPCC is socialistic, globalistic, communistic, corrupt. Like, you can just go down the list.
Uh-huh.
And the one thing I can tell you is science really is apolitical. Okay? Scientists may be political themselves, but science isn't. It can't be. What happens is people that are political try to politicize science, but the science itself is just simply the science. It doesn't matter if you're far right, far left, or in between. The facts do not change.
Yeah, one of what is it, like, facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, like I've definitely heard a lot of that. And the question that I always think of, it's like, well, I mean, if you think that, like, oh, addressing the climate crisis is such a like radical lefty idea, like what does that just say about our current worldview? Where like addressing something that would be better for everyone is considered this like, ooh, like danger. But that's my personal opinion on that. I'm here, you know.
Well, the one thing I look at this, I actually don't have a problem when there's people out there for whatever special reasons are against policies that reduce fossil fuels, or I want to hear what their reasons are. I don't want to hear their lies about the science, because then they have no reason to be talking about this at all. If they can't come up with factual reasons, then I don't want to hear about it. I think it's fair to talk about what policies people should use. That's a different story. But what's the main defense has been this whole time, it's been this way for a couple of decades. Oh, there's the science is wrong. And of course, it's not coming from the scientific community.
Yeah.
There's a very few contrarians out there, and they're not acting in the name of science when they disagree with the science. They're giving their opinions. They're not having peer-reviewed studies given it. A story that I found quite strange. Judith Curry is one of the well-known contrarian scientists. And she actually states that she became a contrarian over climategate. And I look at that and I know what happened during climategate. I know what the investigations were. I just can't understand that. But for someone to become a contrarian or being a climate denier because of something like climategate, where it's been so investigated. There's probably been few things that have ever been investigated so many times by so many prestigious groups ever. And nothing was found, not a shred of these reports. And often there was politicians involved in these reports, and they were deliberately looking to try to pin something on these evil scientists. And there was nothing to pin. People got to learn, okay, at the time, with all the press, I could see how some people would have been naturally upset and question what was going on. But people have to move on from these things once the expert opinion comes in of what had actually transpired.
Absolutely. And here's hoping that when I think it's the AR6 that we're waiting on right now, hopefully we don't have any more quote unquote gates and we don't have like a giant media storm. Like I'm here like, please have it be just a nice report that gets published and we don't have to deal with the media trying to rip a new one into scientists again.
Well, they're certainly going to try. And the one thing, whatever we hear going forward, we have to be realistic. We're talking about, I think there's tens of thousands of references that these people have to go through. The comments are in the tens of thousands. And that's a story in its own right, which is a game the Americans played where they opened it up that anyone can comment on the IPCC report.
Oh, no.
And so the people that really comment are the ones that hate the IPCC and support fossil fuel interests.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll send out comment after comment after comment. And then the IPCC has to go through all these. So just think of what's going on. Tens of thousands of references, hundreds upon hundreds of leading scientists giving their comments and writing the reports, then editing this and putting it together and seeing if everyone still agrees with it once it's edited.
Mm-hmm.
And then the review comments come in and they have to take every single one and give some sort of response to. And there's a deadline when the report has to come out. That these reports come out in any way, shape, or form without being filled with errors, it's just credit to the IPCC. And if one or two get through, why should we care? Mm-hmm. Certainly it's not, should the IPCC try to adjust so it doesn't happen again? Absolutely. But whatever happens with that report, those recommendations are going to be sound.
Mm-hmm. I agree 110%. Or correct my typo, 100%. Well,
you are as kind.
It's like, oh no, they're coming after my emails now. Well, thank you so much for, like, that flew by so quickly as it did the same with last time, but we're gonna roll back into just chatting. I'm gonna run the credits and we'll be right back with you.
Okay, thanks guys.